This episode is brought to you by Decium's Slowvember initiative and the Ordinary Glycolic Acid 7% Exfoliating Toner, now available in 100 milliliters, made perfect for travel. Between the lead up to silly season and the frenzy of Black Friday, the culture of impulse spending and fear of missing out on a good deal feels inescapable come November, which is why Decium is back for its 5th year of the Slowvember initiative. To counteract this shopping panic, Decium is offering 23% off all products on the Ordinary website for the month of November, encouraging shoppers to find long-term skincare solutions, build lasting routines, and encourage mindful consumption. Additionally, the Ordinary's Glycolic Acid 7% Exfoliating Toner in 100 milliliters will be included in the Slowvember initiative discounts. So if you're in the market for a daily acid toner to smooth texture, even tone, and enhance brightness and luminosity, have a think this month about whether the Glycolic Acid 7% Exfoliating Toner might be right for you. In taking a stance against Black Friday, Decium will also be transforming its websites worldwide into a transaction-free day. We truly love to see it. Welcome back to Infinite Scroll. I'm Lauren.
I'm Geordie, and we're the co-founders of Gen Z digital media brand Centennial World. And this week's deep dive is on
why the clean girl aesthetic is in its flop era.
For real. Just a quick reminder before we dive in, if you enjoy this episode, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. It is so nice and personally validating for us, but it's also very, very helpful for us to grow. So also, if you feel so inclined, share on your stories, share with a friend. We would love you forever. And also, if you like the conversations that we're having, make sure to sign up to our newsletter and join our Geneva group, both titled Infinite Scroll, and that way you can engage with us basically every single day of the week.
Exactly. All right. So in this week's episode, we're diving into the beauty trend cycle as it relates to the clean girl aesthetic and exploring why it seems that this trend is on its way out sooner rather than later. Over the past few months, women on TikTok have started to push back against the clean girl aesthetic, claiming the lifestyle is unrealistic and the style is unflattering on most people. This, along with predictions from trend reporters and stylistic choices from new fashion and beauty campaigns, indicate that clean girl is headed towards its demise. So we'll first cover how the clean girl aesthetic became so popular, why it's always been controversial, and then we'll finish by exploring why we think this trend is on the way out and what's next for beauty.
What's next for beauty is the fun part, so I kind of can't wait to get to that. So let's start with what is the clean girl aesthetic. I feel like everyone kind of has an idea of what this looks like, but I think overall, what is most important to kind of platform about this is that it's kind of a vibe. Like it's an aesthetic linked with a lifestyle, linked with an energy. So a piece on Birdie describes it as, quote, "From head to toe, the clean girl aesthetic requires you to be at your best without looking like you spent time getting there." So some of the typical calling cards include slicked back buns with a slight center part, the glossier, the slick, the better, no makeup, covering blemishes without being obvious, glossy lips but not overly colored, blush for a rosy or sun-kissed glow, and brushed up brows. But all of the above is to be almost undetectable. It really is looking like I woke up like this, even though of course nobody wakes up like this. From a fashion perspective, the clean girl dresses in well-fitting basics. The look is preppy but not stuffy, stylish but understated and classic. So the lifestyle of a clean girl goes beyond aesthetics, like we mentioned, but also should be aesthetic. So typically matcha is more clean girl than coffee, but an Instagram-worthy iced coffee is okay. Also smoothies and green juices, and of course minimalist interiors and decor, because of course that works best for photos. Averill Gala writes for The Conversation in a piece titled, quote, "New clean girl and old money aesthetics on TikTok make the same old link between hygiene and class." So she writes, "Even scent and the way one organizes and manages their time contribute in different ways to the clean girl aesthetic. Overall, it makes for a look that is known as fresh, effortless, and natural, but in reality is none of those things. So it's an aesthetic presented as aspirational and to be achieved from the inside out through diet, light exercise, because you can't be a clean girl and sweat in any significant way.
No berries.
No berries. Skincare, hair care, nail care, and practices of personal hygiene. Even though Annabelle made the point, which I think is so hilarious, clean girl as an aesthetic is actually dirty girl behavior. Like slicked hair, greasy hair, glowy skin, sweaty. Like it
Oh
is
my God.
actually really funny when you think about the dichotomy of a clean girl, but obviously that's not how people actually feel about it. That's just a link that we made.
All right, so the history of the clean girl aesthetic and why it kind of popped off in recent years. So, clean girl emerged as a trending term on TikTok in late 2021. As mentioned, clean girl does not just encompass how someone does their hair or their makeup, it really became like this lifestyle that someone presented online. Clean girl was one of the first trends that I can personally remember on TikTok that moved the app away from its like raw and unfiltered roots. Like suddenly the girlies were sharing their highly aspirational life and they were blowing up on the app because of that. And it was this weird dichotomy because the point of TikTok up until then was that it was supposed to be this app that was all about authenticity.
Yeah, which is part of the, contrast of a clean girl is because the way that it was presented at first was that it wasn't an aesthetic. That was just the way that these girls lived their lives. Like it became an aesthetic, but at the beginning we were kind of all tricked into thinking this was the way that they actually just lived and everything they did was extremely beautiful and they were just perfect without like making the link in our head that it actually was taking us back to early Instagram aspirational energy.
Totally. I mean, it's this effortlessness that made Clean Girl at the beginning feel more authentic than the highly curated content of social media past, but that was a lie. That was a lie, okay? And we're going to explore why. But at the time of recording now, hashtag Clean Girl Aesthetic has over 6.8 billion views on TikTok. And the aesthetic has sparked several micro trends and so many think pieces, so many YouTube videos, commentary pieces, everything about this aesthetic.
It's literally fundamentally the reason that Matilda Djerf was able to build a fashion empire. Like, the way that clean girl has like infiltrated the zeitgeist in a commercialized way, like you said, spawned such far-reaching and like financially viable rewards for the people that kind of found it at the right time or like capitalized on the moment the right way.
Totally. Okay, so why did Clean Girl pop off? So I want to emphasize that Clean Girl is actually not really a new concept. I would say that a lot of the Clean Girl lifestyle is like the millennial girl boss repackaged in this less kind of like cringe alpha motivation way.
It's like repackaged in a Gen Z, like post-COVID soft living like ribbon kind of thing, like it's all about the fact that you shouldn't be trying too hard and you should be kind to yourself. But of course, that's not conducive to looking that way.
Totally. So the rise of the clean girl happened for a few main reasons. This is obviously not a comprehensive list, but these are the main reasons that we personally believe. The first is because celebrities like Hailey Bieber, Kendall Jenner, and Bella Hadid kind of came into their own at the same time that TikTok really exploded, and they came into their own as like fashion and beauty icons, right? So like Hollywood it girls have always been in their early to mid 20s, and this generation of famous girlies like moved into that phase of their lives and their careers as TikTok exploded. And as they did that, they adopted this more minimalist kind of aesthetic, right? And I'm interested to hear your take on this because I feel like a big part of it is that the it girls, all those three that I just named, they're models, right? And if you think about like kind of like the model off-duty vibe with like no makeup, just basic clothes, like we know from like America's Next Top Model and other like behind the scenes glimpses of the modeling industry that castings and go-sees, like they all want models to look like that. They want them to be wearing minimal makeup, plain clothes, clean clothes, hair pulled back, or if it's down, it's got to be like really natural, not like overdone. So I think that they were already existing in this realm because they were all models and they just happened at the same time, like this Nepo baby model tribe, like kind of came into their own as the it girls at this same time. And I also think these girls intentionally pared back their looks as a way to kind of like showcase how hot they were in contrast to the hyper glam vibe of the 2010s. Like I genuinely do think Hailey and Kendall and Bella and all of those girlies, like they kind of were giving like pick me in this case.
But it's interesting when you look at like the model off duty angle of it, which I definitely agree with, but I feel like say like a Kate Moss era supermodel used to contrast, how pared back and blank canvas they had to be for their professional lives, with like that messy, grungy look when they were off duty. But I think we've shifted away. I think COVID was a massive cultural shift where we looked at someone like Kate Moss. Nothing looks as good as skinny feels, you know, like literally party girl, messy drug energy. Whereas I think when you look at like Kendall and Bella, who have been very open, Kendall with her anxiety, and Bella has just had like a myriad of health problems. So I think the health is wealth goopy kind of element plays into the way that they present themselves. And I think the soft girl, clean girl kind of ties in together very much, where it's like health is a privilege and a focus on that kind of wellness component definitely plays into it. So I think that is kind of leading into this new generation of supermodels where that's kind of the focus for them, is they're allowed to be like healthy, and it's meant to be representative of this really, you know, like natural glow because you're healthy from the inside out. Like I think there's been a shift in culture and conversation that has allowed them to be the poster children for that. But I think it has a lot to do with the timing, because that's not necessarily what we've seen from supermodels in the past, right? Like they were skinny and hot because they drank Diet Coke and they didn't eat.
Yeah. And like that was, you know, glamorized at the time, but we're in this era of wellness being glamorized. Like the wellness industry didn't really exist the way that it is now, when, like you said, like Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, all those girlies were coming up. And that's not to say there have been no model tribes from then to now, but I think now the difference is that all of these girls were like Nepo baby friends that kind of came up together. And so this like power of the group dynamic almost propelled them to it girl status. It's like when YouTubers collaborate with each other or start content groups, right? It's like the same concept. It's like you just grow together because you're collaborating together. So I feel like it's a similar vibe to that.
But I agree that it feels like whether you party 24/7 as a model, which has a lot to do obviously with genetics, you know, and the lifestyle of it all, with the cigarettes and drugs and Diet Coke, to the wellness era, they're both kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum, but they still allow you to showcase your wealth in a way that doesn't feel like you're showcasing your wealth. Like if you can afford to party all the time, or you're a really successful supermodel that, you know, like has more cash than they know what to do with, it's in theory a same way to like feel authentic while you actually are just living an insanely privileged life, when you can go and get, you know, an IV drip to recover from like a big week at Milan Fashion Week, or you can collaborate with Erewhon on a smoothie that costs regular consumers like $22. Like I think they're rebranded, but they're the same concept, and it has to do with like a level of privilege.
Yes, 100%. I really want an Erewhon smoothie now that you've said it.
Well, unfortunately, you're in Noosa, not in LA, although the vibes may feel similar.
Unfortunately, yes. Okay, the second reason why we believe that Clean Girl really exploded when it did was that it was a response to the 2010s, quote, glam capitalism. So we have talked a lot about the 2010s YouTube glam aesthetic on this podcast, and how this style of makeup influenced the type of trending content on social media at the time, and I'm sure vice versa as well. But UK-based creative agency The Digital Fairy describes this era as glam capitalism. So they pulled this term from a tweet where user @YoungKalez wrote, quote, "I'm sensing that we're headed into the revival of the 2013 to 2016 makeup guru, Victoria's Secret push-up bra and yoga pants, smoky eye, fold-over Uggs, photo booth duck face side bangs, customized Tumblr blog, Visco fade filter, Sephora haul era brackets, glam capitalism." So the Digital Fairy explains that glam capitalism dominated beauty and fashion trends for young women, largely thanks to beauty YouTube becoming the most visible niche online. And the beauty gurus who became associated with this period in time all had these really high glam looks. So they reference Jackie Aina, Nikki Tutorials, like Jeffree Star, all of those people. Quote, "As everybody favored shiny and aesthetic-y feeds, makeup trends were ring light ready, and flexing for the gram was the norm." And I also think there's something to be said for the fact that this glam capitalist era was considered like the height of influencing. Like I think it makes sense when influencing first became a thing during this time, first became like a monetizable career, that it was kind of like flashy and tacky because it was a new medium. And like how else you as the influencer, do you think that you're going to convince somebody to buy something through their phone without being like, oh my God, this is sickening the house down. Look at this highlighter, you know? Like everything felt like it had to be so big and so exciting to grab people's attention. And I think on the consumer side of it, it did, because like we weren't used to this yet.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially since like YouTube and a creator career evolved so fast. So you very quickly had to be like the one that was standing out in the pack too, right? Like the cream of the crop that rises to the top, and you're the one that people choose to watch. And to do that, you have to be like larger than life constantly.
Totally. But then the bubble started to burst. As we know, some of the most famous influencers got kind of greedy, I would say, and started being shady about their recommendations and all of that. So more low key, like under the radar influencing became like the thing. And that's really what Clean Girl is all about, right? It's like, it's not about flaunting an aspirational lifestyle, but it's rather about making content about like your home, your makeup routine, your hair care, your fitness, in a way that appears to be low effort and authentic, because it's the complete opposite of like the loud, over the top aesthetics of the OG influencers. There's like no flashy labels, there's no heavy glam, no flaunting your new money, which I think is where the conversation of like Clean Girl and old money go hand in hand. You know, they're kind of like that emoji, shake hand emoji. Why everybody got obsessed with old money, because the way that the OG beauty YouTubers or just OG influencers in general acted, it was very like quote unquote new money. It was very like gaudy and flashy and over the top and, you know, posing in front of their Range Rovers in that squatted position, shit like that.
I know, it's so interesting now that we've gone from that and we've moved away from reviews too, because they were so transparent, to now like it's a get ready with me or a day in the life video, and you just happen to be using like a Dyson Air app and one of those little green juice whiskey thingies, and like you have a perfect kitchen and a perfect boucle white couch. Like it is in theory so much less obvious, but like every single element of your day is like curated to perfection in the same way.
The third reason why we think Clean Girl really exploded when it did is that it was around the time when Gen Z started surpassing millennials as the new generation driving culture. So by like 2019, 2020, Gen Z became the it generation, driving culture, aesthetics, and social media trends. And with that came a pushback against the highly curated millennial vibe. Like Gen Z was not looking to mall brands to inform their personal style. They didn't want to look like everyone else that they saw on social media. So they started looking to like niche brands, thrifting, all of that to like design their aesthetic. And they found millennial culture to be like really cringe.
It's so ironic because we talk about Gen Z not wanting to be like a part of the pack and don't want to be seen the same as millennials that all found their fashion sense through the same like chain mall brands.
Yeah.
They all look the same now. They all wear oversized blazers and slick buns.
And I think that just shows that that's just life and culture and society and growing up, right? Like you do want to stand out, but not too much. And everybody still wants to have like the cool new thing, and you still do want to follow the trends. But yes, Clean Girl is obviously just as curated as glam capitalism, but it was just packaged really differently. And then the fourth and final reason why we believe that Clean Girl really exploded when it did was because TikTok democratized the it girl. So influencer culture felt a bit gatekeepy, I think, until TikTok. It was obviously harder to blow up, and you needed to either have like a really aspirational life, as in you needed to have a lot of money, or you needed to have a talent like makeup artistry to like really make it, right? As we know, TikTok changed all of this, and with that came the democratization of the it girl. So Clean Girl has been kind of marketed as like the every girl's way to be aspirational, like, you know, get some gold hoops, drink a matcha instead of coffee, slick your hair back, follow this minimalist makeup style, and suddenly you two are like on the same level as Hailey Bieber. Like it is marketed as this like easy, achievable way to be aspirational.
Yeah, that's so true. It did open the floor. It was much more easily replicatable. I don't know if that's what people are going to be like. Are you qualified in journalism?
Replicable.
Yeah. It was so much easier for the regular person to recreate in a way that, you know, a normal person couldn't recreate Jeffree Star in a full LV tracksuit squatting in front of his Lamborghini, you know, like it did feel like a way where we had a closeness to someone like Hailey Bieber that, you know, you could still get a $20 pair of, or less, a $5 pair of gold hoops from Shein, and like no one was the wiser, you know, you could still participate in a trend in the same way. But also, as far as making it like democratized and accessible, it was so exclusive at the same time, like purely because of the style of the aesthetic limits itself to people that look a certain way, that probably looked like Hailey Bieber anyway, or had good skin, or, you know, were comfortable wearing very little makeup, or fit into a stereotype as far as like their body shape and could get away with something oversized. So it is so funny that there's all these kind of reasons behind it, but to every reason that we think it blew up, there's like a flip side of it being like obviously incredibly controversial and problematic, which we are going to go into. Okay, so as for why Clean Girl has been controversial, like I mentioned, I just touched on a few of them, but the first major issue people take with Clean Girl is that it's incredibly classist as a trend. So this is me in my university lecturer era, so bear with me. So as the conversation explains, in 19th century England, infectious diseases spread quickly and commonly in industrializing cities and towns, and often when these places could not keep up with the rapid expansion of the urban population. So, quote, diseases like cholera caused by contaminated water were attributed to the filth and squalor exemplified in the overcrowded city slums. So as a result, the people living in these conditions were branded as unhygienic and morally inferior. So these areas, which obviously like benefited the upper class, they were probably the ones working at the companies that provided the upper class with their income, were considered the primary transmitters of disease broadly, and as a result were seen as like a threat to middle and upper classes. So, quote, in this context, poor hygiene denoted poverty, and conversely, just like on TikTok, perceptions of cleanliness were associated with wealth. So this led to a modern day conversation, obviously like generations on now. This led to a modern day conversation where social reformers looked at the links between poverty and poor hygiene, questioning whether certain traits were innate to certain populations or if hygiene was a learned behavior. So the conversation notes that reformers working in inner city Melbourne discovered that, of course, with education and training, poor children could learn to distinguish between hygienic and unhygienic practices, as you would expect. So, quote, today, hygiene education is delivered to young people not through classes in physical culture, but through short videos that contribute to clean girl and old money aesthetics. Isn't that the most insane thing, that now people are learning, quote unquote, like hygiene practices through an aesthetic that they're served on a social media practice that at the same time excludes them almost from being a part of because of the inherent privilege of being a part of this trend. So the whole classism argument is essentially based on the terminology of clean girl. I think if it was branded with any other name except clean, like that is really the sticking point. So Gayla, who is the author for the conversation, she writes that on the other side of the pandemic, the hygienic divide was exacerbated again, quote, as the world was starkly reminded that poverty and wealth have a direct impact on health outcomes, especially in times of crisis. So Clean Girl has really been kind of, or the privilege of Clean Girl has been exacerbated more so on the other side of COVID. And then another element of classism that Clean Girl employs is the idea of using leisure time for self-improvement, e.g. hot girl walks and Sunday resets. So
this is where the girl boss comes in.
True. Every part of your time is like optimized.
Yes, 100%. This is why I don't see it as any different than the girl bossification of millennial women.
Totally. And I think it's interesting because I feel like a hot girl walk and a Sunday reset, they're branded in such a way that you kind of never really see the full picture. Like I feel like if you're just scrolling TikTok, you're not thinking about it critically. You're not thinking they're a part of the same conversation. But when you think about it broadly in context, you're like, oh, yeah.
And I understand, like, I love the idea of a Sunday reset or a hot girl. Like, I understand when you're doing it and you're like, you know what, I need to get my shit together. And then you have this trend that is so prevalent and you're like, I'm going to do a Sunday reset. And it does inspire you and you feel like you're part of something. You feel like it's like this connection that you have with other people, that you are all the girlies are doing Sunday resets. Like, I get it. But of course, there is a flip side to everything and it's important to look at all of the context.
Yeah, and it's so funny too that, you know, the trend circulating on TikTok that's like, it's applied to a bunch of different trends, but the audio that's like, the girls that get it, get it. Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, literally every single girl gets it. We all look the same, myself included, you know? No, I know. I subscribe. Even with the wedding hairstyle of it all, like I was convinced I had to do a slick bun, like against all odds. I was like, that doesn't feel like me intrinsically or my personality. But it's like, you don't realize how much these trends and the content you're consuming like infiltrate your way of thinking. And I was like, I have to be like a chic Vogue bride. Obviously I'm not a Vogue bride, but like it convinces you that that's what you have to do.
No, when I went and got my hair done last week, I was talking to Alex. That's our shared hairdresser. We share everything. And he was like talking to me about what you're doing for your wedding hair. And he was like, convince her not to do the bun. He was like, her hair looks so good down. That's who she is. You want to feel like yourself on your wedding day. I was like, don't worry. I don't think she'll do the bun.
No. We've moved past it. We've analyzed why we feel this way and we've moved past it.
Yes.
But coming back to this, you know, like it really perpetuates the idea that you need to have a certain amount of free time to fit in your self-improvement. But that's even more exaggerated because that means you probably also have time to rot because, you know, Gen Z, you need to balance your mental and physical health. That's also important for a clean girl. You need to be like taking care of yourself physically, but also give yourself time to rest. You can't be like go all the time because that's not very clean girl. But of course you're doing that off camera because it's not aesthetic. So as Gayla notes, this is not a groundbreaking realization. Like these aesthetics are intrinsically commercial. So celebrities and influencers are making affiliate revenue like out the nose by convincing consumers that they need, like I mentioned, an electric whisk to mix in their daily greens powder into their water every morning. And you need the Charlotte Tilbury Flawless filter that helps you glow while looking like you aren't wearing any makeup. But then you need expensive skincare to ensure the makeup products you're using you don't need any concealer because how dare you need anything above like light coverage products as a clean girl.
It reminds me of that TikTok where Hailey Bieber puts like one tiny dot of concealer under her eye and blends it in. And everybody was like, what the actual fuck? Like half the internet was like, this is so outrageous and unrealistic and pick me. And then the other side of the internet was like, oh my God, I need to buy Rhode makeup or Rhode skincare right now because if Hailey Bieber only needs that much concealer, like I can't even imagine what her skincare must be like.
No, it's so insane and it's so true. And whether or not the products are practical is almost besides the point because if the product is expensive, it will at least like look good in a day in the life or get ready with me video, which is actually like a bigger part of the battle is like that your Dior lip oil, which I know is probably an unfair thing to say because it's actually good and you love it.
Yeah.
But like, as long as it says Dior and the packaging is beautiful, it kind of doesn't matter if the product's good, right?
You know, it's actually kind of interesting because I actually do think that glam capitalism, that era, even though we did see these beauty influencers flaunting labels and people were trying to buy designer things, I think more than they previously had. Like I saw something one time where somebody was saying that like back in the day, growing up as like a kid or like in the 90s, 80s, whatever, having designer things was considered like not like the average person didn't strive to have a designer bag, right? Like that was something that like you thought as an average person was reserved for like celebrities or like really wealthy people. And you didn't actually think about it or care about it because it wasn't for you. And then social media, of course, kind of democratized that and made us all aspire for that. And of course, those OG influencers were a big part of it because we saw them go from regular people to all of a sudden like millionaires. But I still think that in that glam capitalism kind of era, they also, those beauty gurus, even though they were making so much money, they also kind of democratized labels in a way or like high-end products in a way because suddenly we were all striving to buy like Morphe palettes for like $30 for 30 shades because they were recommending them. And they did teach us that like you don't need to buy a Chanel bronzer. You can actually just buy a Morphe bronzer or, you know, whatever. They were like pulling the wool off over our eyes, whatever that's saying. So I feel like we're actually like coming back around to when everybody's like, actually, no, don't buy drugstore products. You actually do need this foundation that's $80.
Yes, even though, you know, that's what beauty YouTubers have taught us, that the color payoff in a Morphe palette is probably better because that's what they prioritize. Like makeup is their thing. Whereas, yeah, like, you know, a designer like Chanel or Dior, like makeup isn't their first priority in the scheme of like a legacy fashion house. So it is interesting that we're going backwards in a lot of ways, that our priorities have shifted back to the imaging of it all.
Yeah.
Even though beauty YouTubers, like it kind of coexisted for them. Like they cared about the brands, but they also were convincing us that you could have other things that were more effective that weren't that expensive at the same time.
I guess the difference is that Clean Girl is selling a lifestyle as opposed to teaching you how to do your makeup.
Instead of telling you that this product is good at this, these people are integrating it in a way that feels really authentic, that you actually don't know if they're using it or not. But it keeps it exclusive because people are physically incapable of buying in, especially in the economic situation that we're in right now. Like if you search clean girl aesthetic, which I did on Google in preparation for this episode, you will find the first page of results are made up primarily of like how-to articles. So achieving the ultimate clean girl aesthetic, how to do the TikTok makeup trend, clean girl aesthetic, shopping articles like how to wear the clean girl aesthetic, fashion trend, and a jewelry guide for the clean girl aesthetic. Like brands must not believe their luck when a trend of this scale emerges and is like so perfectly primed for like SEO laden shopping content to fit into.
Yeah, 100%.
It's so commercialized and it seems so obvious to us, but I don't think it is to everyone. And then the second biggest, or like another one of the massive criticisms of Clean Girl, is how racist it is. So it also leads back into using hygiene as a technique of colonization throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, and the issues of racism that come into play when discussing Clean Girl as a trend. So historian Alison Bashford evidenced in her book titled Imperial Hygiene how crucial the concept of hygiene was to British expansion and colonization of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So the concept is understood as colonialization by the known laws of cleanliness. So historically, hygiene discourse has been weaponized to justify segregation. The modern day concept of clean girl, as Gala for the Conversation writes, draws on this history, quote, redeploying racialized associations between hygiene and wealth to deem some people fashionable and aspirational. These aesthetics imply that not everyone has the capacity to be a clean girl, privileged by the old money derived from aristocratic, imperial, colonialist roots. But like lots more historical context than I feel like anyone would ever expect to be linked to a terminology like clean girl. And then separate from hygiene, Tiana Randall writes for ID that, quote, a heritage of slicked back buns, gold hoops and buttery skin has been around for decades and previously usually appeared on black and brown women, now co-opted and reduced to a trend represented by white women. So a tweet went viral mid last year that read, clean girl aesthetic but make it black, with a thread primarily including skinny black women with straight hair. The tweet saw over 90,000 likes, but sparked discourse about the lack of inclusivity it encouraged, despite being posted by a black creator. So a reply to the thread read, quote, the issue with the clean girl aesthetic is that it only represents skinny, thin, loose curl textured, desirable black women with no blemishes on their face, implying that anyone outside of that aesthetic is dirty. You can just call it minimalist makeup. So Randall writes that similar trends like black girl luxury and slow living continue to perpetuate the same energy as clean girl, one that, quote, uplifts rich skinny women with acne-free faces and excludes others, subconsciously aligning with Euro beauty standards. It also invariably excludes experimental glam and cultural signifiers when it comes to beauty, deeming them dirty. Like, it's so crazy, the cultural representations of makeup too, you know, and if you're wearing things on your face that are like culturally representative, or you do your makeup a certain way, under these guidelines of this trend, that is deemed dirty. So it is so incredibly problematic from that perspective as well. And then the ageism and fat phobia of it all have been touched on a little bit in the above points, but I think it's clear that clean girl places so much value on thinness and youthfulness to fit the aesthetic mold. There's no place for aging or a body type that isn't like traditionally aspirational.
Yeah, and I think on the racism part as well, or the point where you were making about like cultural signifiers, when I typed in clean girl, I think I typed in like clean girl demise on TikTok or like clean girl going away or something. And I saw this video of this Indian girl talking about like it was just like a video of her wearing clothes and it had like text over screen, and I don't have it in front of me. I should have written it down, but she basically said like, let's get rid of the clean girl because, you know, our culture as an Indian culture is all about celebrating by wearing different colors and like celebrating our livelihood with colors and textures and design in that way. And clean girl doesn't allow for any of that. And I could completely see how it almost just like, I mean, it whitewashes culture. Like that's what it's trying to do. Completely. And that's what it's doing. So why do we think clean girl will be out of style soon? So aside from the problematic aspects of the clean girl aesthetic, which obviously haven't hindered the trend up until now, so I don't think that's going to be the reason that it goes away, there are a few reasons why it seems that the clean girl is on the way out. The first is today's fast moving trend cycle. So when you consider the typical trend life cycle in fashion, which is similar to beauty, it goes through 5 stages. And this is according to Masterclass. The first stage is introduction, which is when the new aesthetic or product first enters the beauty world. At this point, the aesthetic or product is relatively inaccessible. The second is increase. The increase stage is when the new aesthetic begins gaining momentum and traction in the industry. The third is peak. In the peak stage, the trend has reached full saturation in the general public, and many everyday consumers begin wearing the trend. The fourth is decline. In the decline stage, the trend will have become oversaturated in the market. During this period of time, the trend's intense popularity will begin to turn consumers off. And the fifth is obsolescence, and this is when a trend is considered out of date by the general public. So I would say, where do you think we fit with clean girl? I would say we're like almost in the decline. I don't think we're quite there.
Yes, I completely agree. I think we're between the peak and decline at the moment, because it is really interesting that even though every person is dressing the same way, it still doesn't seem like the sentiment has changed. Like, I don't know why that is. Maybe because clean girl, like we've said the whole way through so far, maybe it's because the clean girl aesthetic is so much bigger than an aesthetic, and there are so many different ways and categories in which brands and influencers can jump on board. So maybe because it isn't limited to, you know, like a specific eye look, you know, like a smoky eye being representative of like a grunge culture, even though in a way grunge culture is similar in that it's like an overarching vibe. But I think because it is so broad, and especially because, you know, there is this ongoing focus on like health and wellness that kind of came out of COVID, I think maybe it's seen a longer life cycle than it should have, because there's so much riding on this now from a commercial perspective.
Well, I mean, like back in the day, and what I mean back in the day, I mean like pre-TikTok, you know, trends lasted for a few years. Like that's like clean girl is not an anomaly in that sense. It's an anomaly in the sense of like TikTok has brought about the era of the micro trend, meaning the life cycles happen very quickly, sometimes in a matter of weeks or days, right? And in the past few years, we have seen the rise of a number of micro trends in beauty and fashion. You know, for example, siren eyes, strawberry makeup, latte makeup. And I guess to your point, like while those were like literally just a couple weeks, like those just were blips in the radar, and clean girl is not, I guess it's because, like you said, this is more of like a movement, quote unquote, or like a lifestyle that clean girl is. So it's going to take a bit longer for people to deconstruct from that, I guess.
Yeah, and I also think to the evolution or the spark of clean girl, it was kind of the first TikTok trend to gain mainstream traction. So I think we actually haven't seen, in a way, almost since TikTok infiltrate mainstream culture. And then I think mainstream culture has a much longer life cycle in the scheme of things. So I think a lot of things do just stay on TikTok. You know, the products aren't developed in reaction to like a strawberry makeup trend. It's like brands that already have products that fit into that can use that as marketing for like 2 weeks if they want to. But I think clean girl was so big and it had so much gravity and influence on the commercialization of that aesthetic that I think, you know, when massive companies are going into product development to fit that, it's like forcing it out a little bit longer all the time, you know?
Totally. And I guess the point of clean girl, at least in theory, it's supposed to be like this minimalist, achievable style. And so I think that's also why it stayed around for so long. However, as we know, that's not totally the case. And it has started to become a trend where it's not really making women feel good about themselves. So, an important part of trends and an often overlooked part is that wearing makeup or choosing an aesthetic like that is supposed to make us feel good about ourselves. It's supposed to make us feel like ourselves, like we're exploring ourselves. And as more and more women admit that the clean girl aesthetic makes them feel ugly or like not so cute, confidence is something that some women appear to have sacrificed to fit in with the clean girl trend.
I think for a minute too, it really was a signifier that you were like in the know. Like before
Yes.
it was like, you know, the girlies that get it. It like being ironic. It actually was like a way for people to say like, look, I'm online and I'm ahead of the curve and I'm a part of the culture before it became mainstream. And now that, you know, everyone's dressing the same, I think people are feeling a little bit more freedom now to be like, I'm not ahead of the curve anymore. So it's giving them room to explore like what that might look like in the future.
Yeah. So at Hair by Kate Houston posted a video on her TikTok that went viral a couple months ago talking about how the clean girl aesthetic just doesn't make her feel good. She said, quote, "I am done with the clean girl makeup aesthetic. I haven't felt pretty for like the past 5 years. And I think it's because I need to start doing my makeup like I did back in 2005 when I was in high school." And then in the video, she goes on to apply this like Y2K makeup style, concluding the TikTok by saying how much better she feels.
She showed photos of Ashley Simpson, like the Olsen twins, Adriana Lima, and for some context, which is so funny, Annabelle and I were talking about the Olsen twins and she was like, I can't remember which one has Kate in their name, like Ashley Kate or Mary Kate. And it's just like,
No.
You know, in The Summer I Turned Pretty, where Susanna turns to Belly and she's talking about the Olsen twins and she's like, oh, they're sisters with the Scarlet Witch. I feel like that's how I have to talk to Annabelle about like the impact of the Olsen twins.
That's the most insane cultural difference between Gen Z and millennials that I've ever heard. She doesn't know it's Mary Kate.
I know. I was
Mary
like,
Kate, that's her
Ashley-
name.
I know. Like you thought it was Ashley Kate. Maybe that was an option. It was so funny. But this creator, Hair by Kate Houston, was discussing how much she loved a smudged liner and a red lip or like gloss combo. And when you're using references like the Olsen twins, like I totally get it. It takes me right back for sure. And they were truly like the moment. And I think part of why Clean Girl had so much longevity too was you could wear it every day, but you could also wear it out. Whereas this look, you know, like a glam moment is almost limited to like, you know, a Saturday night at the club.
Yeah.
Like you can't go out to coffee on a Wednesday morning with a smudge liner and a red lip. So I feel like too, people wanted something that they would get like a bit more wear out of in theory. But I think in this instance, like the nostalgia piece is huge for millennials. So in theory, will Gen Z be nostalgic for Clean Girl in like 5 to 10 years? Like I think obviously for millennials, this return to like a grungier look symbolizes a simpler time. That's why everyone at their core participates in like a nostalgic trend. And I wonder if Clean Girl does or doesn't represent a simpler time for Gen Z, or like whether it will in the future. Because for me, like I feel like we've gone through this really stressful period of like global trauma through COVID and like economic uncertainty as the world recovers. But maybe there were issues of this scale for millennials. But the point is that you're in your 20s, you're having fun, you're not worried about that. You're only kind of worried about yourself. So maybe Clean Girl will be nostalgic for Gen Z, which I think would be so interesting.
Oh, I could totally see that. I also just think, as I talked about before, like the trend cycle, it moves so much quicker now. So the fact that Y2K came back this quickly, you know, it shows that I do think in 10 years, Clean Girl will come back and it'll be like Gen Alpha doing Clean Girl. It'll be so cute.
100%. But
They'll all feel ugly, but it'll be cute.
well, they'll all go out looking like eggs again. And we'll be like, we tried this. It didn't work.
No, I remember. So this was pre-Clean Girl. This was like 7 years ago when I first moved to Australia. I was in my first job. And I remember one day I was really hungover at work and I put my hair in a bun, and I used to have really long hair. So it was just like in a bun on top of my head, I think. And this guy that I sat beside at work was like, I hate when women wear buns. I find it really ugly. They look bald. And I just think about that man all the time now when it comes to clean girl, because like these slicked buns, he must walk around now that clean girl is a thing, and be like, everybody is so ugly.
Yeah, that was really, Tumblr era, like the messy bun moment. That felt like a definitely like a standalone aesthetic. Commentary creator Michelle Skidelsky made a similar point, noting how the clean girl aesthetic just isn't fun. So she compares the it girl aesthetic of today to the 2010 content creators, contrasting the maximalist, colorful aesthetic of Bethany Moda, Lord DIY, My Life as Eva against the clean girl vibe. Quote, this could be coming from a place of me just being kind of old and not really knowing what young girls are watching these days, but I feel like Bethany Motors of today are the clean girl creators, where everything is very pristine and white, light colors. That kind of makes me a little bit sad to think of an 11-year-old aspiring to that sort of lifestyle, because the clean girl vibe is very serious and wellness focused. And when we consider the seriousness of the clean girl trend, it makes sense that people are just over it. Like the girlies want to have fun again.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the whole cultural zeitgeist of this year is like girlies having fun, celebrating their femininity, being colorful, like the Barbie movie. There's just so many things that have like celebrated hyper femininity and individualism and aesthetics this year for girls. And it is in contrast to clean girl. And it's a great point that she made, that clean girl is very serious, because I had not considered it in that context or like in that way before. And that is a great way to put it.
Yeah, clean girl is like the anti-Alex Earl. You can't go out, you can't have fun, you have to, or it's like an 80% of the time I'm at the gym, so the 20% of the time I can be like out with my friends, or like, it's only dinners where I'm home by 9 o'clock and in bed. And I'm like, there's definitely a place for that. And I love that. But also sometimes you need to let your hair down. It also fits into those TikToks that I've seen actually a lot. And there's a lot of tweets about it as well, about how modern design has like wiped out any like grandeur or like design for the sake of design. Like no one these days would put a stained glass window in. A street light used to be like intricately and beautifully designed. Now it's like minimalist. It's like function over form has like seeped into every aspect of our lives, and minimalism can be beautiful, but not when it's replaced every other creative component, like interiors especially, but very little is beautiful for the sake of being beautiful. And I think clean girl is just another iteration of that. Like, do you remember looking at Kim Kardashian's house and being like, this is the most boring thing in the whole world?
Yes. No, totally. And I mean, even now that we've bought our place and like we're looking at different kitchen designs and stuff, like how we want to eventually renovate, and the modern aesthetic now and the easy way to go is to just get like everything all white, fake marble, whatever, do like the whole IKEA thing. But I'm really trying to curate a specific style for myself, because that's not actually what I inherently am drawn to. Like I love a colorful moment. I know that I have a style deep within, but it is being suppressed
100%.
by like culture's minimalism right now.
100%. And I think with an apartment too, this is like definitely an aside, but I think with an apartment too, and we felt this very much kind of when we moved into our place and we're having the same like kind of deliberations. Minimalist hits different when you have like a small cozy space. Like when you have a house the size of Kim Kardashian's and it's an intentional vibe. Whereas I think if we have a small space anyway, we might as well make it like cozy and well designed and like it feel homey in a way, because it's gonna feel homey anyway because it's small. So I feel like we definitely have been leaning into that a lot more. But it's interesting because Kendall Jenner's house is really homey, and you would think that she would be the picture of a minimalist interior, clean girl energy. So there are some kind of unexpected contrasts as far as like the celebrity of it all, I feel.
And then the final reason why we think clean girl is starting to enter its decline era is because there's more transparency on social media now about what it actually takes to achieve this look and this lifestyle, right? So like we've been on this journey now for a couple of years. And so there are more and more creators that are starting to share what it really takes and what this looks like to achieve this lifestyle. It kind of like shatters the illusion. So at Vanessa Nicole Stern is a makeup artist who made a video kind of talking about this exact topic. She shared a tutorial of how she gets that elevated clean girl look. And in this video, she said, quote, "I don't think the average person really understands how much makeup and layering that we are using. That is what makes your makeup last all night, and that is what makes your makeup look like celebrity makeup. In other words, one dab of Hailey Bieber concealer and a wash of bronzer will not cut it for the true clean girl aesthetic and what the girlies are wearing on TikTok in these videos and on camera when they're taking photos."
100%. Like, it actually reminded me of the Mary Phillips technique that went viral too. So she's a celebrity makeup artist, and she went viral for the makeup she does on Kendall and Hailey. And she spoke about underpainting and how she keeps it all one layer instead of layering foundation, concealer, contour, blush. She fills the gaps instead of putting it like over the top to keep it looking the closest thing to real skin. So she says it as like she'll put the bones on, like her contour, and then she'll build around that to like build the face instead of building on top of that. But she has spoken about how much it requires constant touch-ups through the night. It is so much more high maintenance, and you essentially have to have perfect skin to pull it off. And she's been pretty open about that, and everyone has replicated that and says it looks amazing, but it looks amazing for 10 minutes. Like, Hailey and Kendall have her with them all night when that's the strategy that they use.
Yeah, totally. And so I just think as we kind of gain more insight on social media about what it takes to emulate the clean girl from, you know, a financial perspective, an aesthetics perspective, an effort perspective, it's not as enticing as it once was.
Oh, completely. There was also this TikTok from a creator whose name I can't remember, but I was literally crying watching it. Her boyfriend was filming her getting ready in the mirror. And she was bawling her eyes out because she couldn't get her slicked bun exactly how she liked it. She was talking about how she looked like an egg because it wasn't slicked in the right places and her hair had separated in others. And I think it is such a universal experience, but it really pulled the curtain back on how hard it is to look effortless. Like, he was like, "Why are you crying?" And she's like, "My bun just doesn't look right." And she's like, "Stop filming me." Like, and it all kind of ends up in, you know, like comedic, with a kind of comedic undertone, but it is so true. Like, every girl has had a fucking breakdown trying to make their what looks like a 2-second bun like look the way that they want it to look. On that note, with the clean girl energy, you know, vanishing into the horizon, hopefully, because I am also done with it. I'm ready to start figuring out what my personal actual vibe is again. But what do you think will be next as far as beauty trends?
I think 90s grunge, because what's interesting is like we moved through like a Y2K resurgence at the same time as Clean Girl, although Clean Girl definitely came first, which is why I think it kind of stuck around. And Y2K is literally the antithesis of Clean Girl. So I think that is just like an interesting point to note that they kind of came up around the same time. But, you know, we've moved through Y2K now. It's kind of done. And everyone keeps talking about how 90s is on the cusp of reemerging. So I think in terms of beauty, what this will look like is, I think it will still be way less makeup than the glam capitalist era. I don't think we'll be out here doing like cut creases anytime soon again.
Again.
Yeah. But I think it will be actual low effort makeup, but it will still be makeup. It will be makeup that makes people feel cool, express themselves, and look good. Not that Clean Girl doesn't look good. I think everybody who does Clean Girl like looks beautiful. I do think it's a beautiful makeup look. It's just like not for everyone. It's not for me. So I think what we'll see is like, you know, smudged eyeliner. I think we'll see a swipe of brown eyeshadow all over the lid. Like, that's how we all learned how to do makeup. Like, we didn't learn anything about like a crease color and then like packing on, you know, a lighter color on our lid. Like, when we were doing like 90s makeup, it was all about like a brown eyelid and that was it. You know, I think we'll kind of go back to that era where it was like you're wearing makeup and you look like you're wearing makeup. It's not like Clean Girl where it's trying to be like no makeup, but I think it will just be back to basics a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that. And then also like the Alex Earl like it girl moment we're seeing really supports the theory that we're moving away from clean girl, hyper productive, soft life girly back into like a fun, messy party girl style. Like the Kesha of it all was my first true cultural affinity I felt as far as like the beauty element of it all. And then obviously like me cosplaying as an economist, so bear with me, but like in moments of economic uncertainty and recession, like what we're going through right now, like everyone's so stressed, people revert to beauty to express themselves because it's more affordable. It's a way to participate in culture that doesn't require the spend of luxury fashion or cars or holidays. So I think people will revert back to makeup and beauty looks that allow them to express themselves, whatever that looks like. Like we said, clean girl was so uniform, and this will let them bring like that fun party girl style back. And I think we're seeing this, like even luxury fashion brands are adopting that energy with beauty. Like Kylie's acne shoot felt really representative of the direction that beauty is moving. Like even though it was a little bit more problematic than just like messy girl energy because she was cosplaying as working class. People were really pissed about that. But a TikTok from Hannah Zook Pop said Addison Rae is giving the same energy, like messy party girl, smudged eye makeup, tangled hair, like this Kesha 2010s glittery train wreck energy. And I think people will be going out and partying and drinking because they're like ready for a break. Like we said, the world is so serious right now. Everyone just needs like a moment of respite, you know?
If you look at like the 1920s, that was a response to the war ending and, you know, the Spanish flu and all of that. I think it was the Spanish flu. I hope I didn't get that wrong.
Historians, economists, we're just tick, tick, tick.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think we're kind of, even though everything is literally so bad, the world is actually horrific. I think in the next couple of years, we will enter into this era, like you said, of everybody just not giving a flying fuck and trying to have fun the way that the world was in like the 1920s.
100%. I have a really good friend's 30th in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to do like a smoky eye. I'm just going to go for it. I'm already thinking about like what events feel right to start like experimenting with makeup again. And I think that's a really exciting place to be in. And I think that is like strictly evidence of the fact that clean girl is tipping over into the decline stage of a trend.
Clean girl is in its flop era. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
For real. This is better than any essay I ever wrote in university.
Probably. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope that this was interesting. We hope you learned something. We are so interested to know if you guys think clean girl is also in its flop era, if clean girl makes you feel ugly like it makes me feel ugly. I'm just interested to hear. So give us some feedback, rate, review, subscribe, comment on YouTube, comment on Spotify, slide into our DMs, let us know.
Validation always welcome about, you know, our personal approach to beauty trends too. But no, thank you so much for listening, guys, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.